Isurag pronounce na yung pangalan. Jean-Jacques Rousseau.
Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Ano siya?
French?
From Geneva.
Geneva na.
Geneva na siya nga political philosopher.
Ika. And it's about the katong third version of social contract theory. We've been talking about social contract theory for the past episodes. Lain-lain nga philosopher. Now it's time for Jean-Jacques Rousseau, a man from Geneva. I think about the responsibility, the assurance of my commitment, the respect that I have for every detail of what nature has to offer. To be able to create a novelty of both art and music, it requires the stillness and solitude of a real craftsman. Then I think about the possibilities when this becomes a part of someone else's experience. Exquisite sound and superb playability manifest in each of Huni's handcrafted ukuleles. Huni is the expression of my understanding of the sacred relationship between the instrument and the artist. My name is Brian Bruces. I am Huni.
Modernong Pilosopo. Modernong Pilosopo. Modernong Pilosopo. Ancient philosophies presented and discussed by two Modernong Pilosopos in free-flowing, unscripted, raw, yet fun and relatable conversations. Modernong Pilosopo. Modernong Pilosopo, the podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, your host for tonight's show,
Brian Bruces and attorney Rene Abseri Jr.
All right.
Hello.
Tungo ka na, Claude?
Yes, yo.
Hello. Oh, darade. We are live. Another episode of Modernong Pilosopo on a Saturday na day. Kumusta na day?
Bate.
Kumbate. So, mag-iinom niyo diya.
Wala, dili ni siya sponsor na to, pero sa local brandy na to. Sure.
Yeah, tagay gamay. May una nga ito ipang-greet ang atong mga viewers. Magdaggang ni Uban at Aron. Una sa tayo, atong pasalamatan ng mga Aron sa live na to. Si Doc Alvin Arcaya, shout out daw daan ni Fellow Durano o si Gaygay Aquilos Meliado. Yeah, si Kate Janice Halalon watching from Davao City. Thanks Janice. May gabihin nyo diya sa Davao.
May gabi.
Si Kuan po, kisa pa yung nadila
di. Sila Fellow, sila Gaygay, silang Alvin ako ng mga brothers and sisters sa akong organization sa UP.
Uy, may gabi.
UP sa Gabay. May gabi ninyo.
May gabi.
Tapos kita lang mga schoolmates sa Ozami City.
Ozami City. Naapod si Kuan di. Si kisa pa yung nadila. Si atong amigo si Ramon Angeles.
Yeah.
Pa-shout out mga idol sa akong misis nga si Carolina Pateres Angeles. Shout out Carol. May pagtan-aw niyo diya sa among live session dire.
Cheers niyo gamay sa mga nananaw diya.
Cheers. Naapod si Attorney Hazel ni tan-aw dire.
Hi.
Ihay ko na ko. Diya.
Ay, naradi siya dire.
Skillet eh.
Naradi siya dire sa mga social distancing mo kami. Mga 6 meters siguro siya.
Kanay nindot. Nindot na i-document. Pakita ko sa kalayo ang kuan ba.
Kapit ba namin nag-maintain yung social distancing. Isod na.
Isod kayo. Fiscal office at padong. Alright. So ayo nila diyon sa atong topic ron atong introduce ang atong philosopher for tonight.
JEAN Jacques Rousseau.
Disurag pronounce rin yung pangalan. Jean-Jacques Rousseau.
JEAN Jacques Rousseau. Marag ko na siya.
French?
From Geneva.
Geneva.
Geneva na siya nga political philosopher.
Eka. And it's about the katong third version of social contract theory. We've been talking about social contract theory for the past episodes. Lain-lain nga philosopher. Now it's time for Jean-Jacques Rousseau, a man from Geneva. Sige Lodi.
Yeah. Social contract theory po na siya. Partial. Like we discussed before, natay previous two. Katong si Thomas Hobbes, na po si John Locke. And ang third version sa social contract, kani siya si Rousseau. I tell you, na siya mga similarities of differences with the previous two.
Okay.
The point of the social contract gihapon, which are common to the three, kang Thomas Hobbes, kang John Locke, o kang Rousseau, ang common nilang tulog yun is the concept of social contract as the origin of our governments. Mora na siya. Which means that before our governments existed, we live in a state of nature.
Okay.
It's a type of environment in which wala tay balaod, wala tay state that will control and regulate our behavior. And that's precisely the reason that people come together, they agreed to create a government. Muna siya gitawag na ito nga social contract. The three, even though they are very different in their own ways, but the three of them are in unison with that particular perspective when you speak of the social contract.
Okay.
That we live in the state of nature, and there are inconveniences in the state of nature. That's exactly the reason why we come together and agree to create a government. So that, of course, we can escape from whatever inconvenience and problem we had from the state of nature. And ang ganaan ko na, even though they have their they have their common ground, that is the social contract. The three of them, they differ. They have their own versions in terms of the state of nature, the nature of man, the social contract, and of course, the type of government. Katong sugdan, kang Thomas Hobbes, let's have a review lang sa itong mga naminaw.
Sige, gamay review.
Kung sa ganito yung nature of man ni Thomas Hobbes, if you can recall.
Kalimutan ko.
Ura recitation ba?
Paita ni orag hagbong tayo.
Thomas Hobbes, itong pinakaunang version sa social contract.
Katotong man is evil. Mo na?
Correct.
Kanay.
Tagaan ka. Recitation pa ni karon, murag na kay 1.5 siguro, no? Kay Bullseye man, no?
Bullseye.
According to Thomas Hobbes, man is by nature
evil,
selfish,
diba? Brutish.
Pag abot na to kang John Locke, katong concept of tabula rasa, the mind is a clean slate, which means that man by nature, as far as John Locke is concerned, is what? Good. Diba?
Totally, kuan gid siya, empty slot pagsugod. Buutan kadaan pag pamangkay ko murag computer ba igpalit nimo ikaw ay butang program. Muna
siya kang John Locke atong second version sa social contract.
Kani karon naman ay third.
Kang Jean-Jacques Rousseau partial. Ang iyapon neither good nor bad. Wala gid siya mag-state for the record whether or not person is evil or bad. And you might ask why, because according to Jean-Jacques Rousseau, man is by nature neither good nor evil because we are purely governed by our instincts or impulses.
Diya ka. Neutral
basic
yan.
instincts na to. Neutral siya. So if we have Thomas Hobbes who believes that man by nature is bad, John Locke good because we are a clean slate, tabula rasa. Here came a certain political philosopher, the third version, who believe that we are neutral. We are neither good nor bad. And you might ask him why, precisely because we are governed by our instincts, our impulses, our appetite for self-preservation. Diba, Parsyo? Kung sa may example sa itong mga instincts, like gutomon ta Parsyo. Diba? Ang taong gutom, are you good or bad? You are neither good nor bad. You are basically
buhaton after na.
You're acting, but the point is, the feeling or the impulse or the instinct of being hungry is precisely sa atong mga impulse o appetite o atong instinct. It doesn't make us good or bad. Para ni Rousseau, in the state of nature, we are living in a free world and we are governed purely by our instincts. Right? So let's proceed with the second category of this, trying to distinguish the three. Man is by nature bad, Kang Hubbs. Man is by nature good for John Locke. For Rousseau, man is by nature neutral, neither good nor bad, because we are governed by our instincts. Let's proceed with the state of nature.
Okay.
Kang Thomas Hobbes part show, because we are by nature bad, as far as Thomas Hobbes is concerned, it goes without saying that state of nature is actually the state of war. Diba? Puro good ta bad.
Puro maldito. Away per me.
So matter of fact, life is short, nasty, brutish, diba? Solitary, and poor. Diba? Ito yung now, when we proceed to John Locke, we are by nature.
Nature good.
But we are rational.
Rational.
Sa ato pa, yung state of nature, we are in the state of freedom in accordance with the natural law. Because we are by nature good, at the same time rational, we know what's right and what's wrong. So, inanakahapsa yung state of nature kang John Locke. Pero, of course, pag abot kang Rousseau, since we are by nature governed by our instincts and impulses, we live in a state of nature. Perfect freedom gyapon siya per show. We are free. As a matter of fact, he mentioned sa iyang libro, we are by nature free, but everywhere we are in chains. Diba? We're very, very ironic. No? Free magata. Nga naman everywhere we are in chains. Why is it that there is a naman gikadina man ta nga we are by nature free? The freedom that Rousseau is trying to imply is the natural freedom that we enjoy. Kanabitang mura tagbatang gamay nga biyaan tas tong ginikanan. We enjoy natural freedom. We have the natural freedom to roam around, to touch anything that we want to, we do whatever we want without any restraint in our physical behavior. We call that natural freedom. Muna siyang natural freedom na state of nature na discussed ni Rousseau. But you know what? If you're naturally free without any restraint in your behavior, without any limitation, unsa may dautan na naparsyo. Just imagine, you, me, and the rest of the millions of the Philippines are all free and acting based on your impulse and appetites and your instinct. All of us are free without limits in our behavior. So may tabo parsyo.
Mura ra ni kuano di kang Thomas Hobbes. Yeah.
Technically, naging siya conflicts.
War.
Diba? Naging may tabo ng mga inconvenience. Because people have their natural freedom and they're acting based on their instinct. And they have technically no limits. Walay mag-regulate sa atong behavior per show. Like I'm hungry, you're hungry. And we want to eat at the same time. And we crave for the same food. And what will happen? There's no limit to our behavior. That will create a conflict. And that is the inconvenience in the state of nature as far as Rousseau is concerned. That we are totally free. Why problema? We are acting based on our impulse and our appetites and our instincts. But the problem is that we are naturally free. We don't have a law that will regulate our behavior, that will limit our freedom. Muna may tabo. So makaingon ka foreshadowing, kinahanglan gyud po ta gobyerno as far as Rousseau is concerned. Just like the rest of the political philosophers who are advocating for the social contract theory like Hobbes, John Locke. Because John Locke, according to him, because we are by nature bad, and because we are living in the state of nature, which is a state of war, that's why we need to have a government that is very authoritative, authoritarian. Diba? You give all of your rights to the sovereign. Diba? That is as far as Hobbes is concerned. Kang John Locke Parsho, we are by nature, we are by nature good. Tabula rasa. We know what's right and what's wrong, but the problem is that, katong ingon ako nimo before Parsho, if you can remember, we are the complainant and defendant of our own case. Diba? Katubitang, there's no such thing as an impartial judge that will resolve controversies. Right? Rakistanan ng mga tao to the extent that we don't need a third-party arbitrator to decide our own controversy. And again, to create a problem. Because we are, but of course,
human.
Yeah, we are human as we are. So again, we created a government. Now we go back to Jean-Jacques Rousseau, our political philosopher for today. The problem is that we are very, very free. We're acting based on our instincts and our impulse and our appetites. The problem is that we don't have something that will limit our behavior. So we need to have a government. So muna nga, the people again, we came together to create a social contract so that we'll have a government that will address this problem. Na mga na si Mr. Felodorano, humans strive but depends entirely on how we're exposed to the situation or influence. That is correct, Mr. Felodorano. Muna siyang husband sa akong partner sa office nga si Attorney Jesse. That is very correct. Human nature is really to strive. Sakto giniingon ni Mr. Felodorano. To basically to strive to live. That's basically part of our instinct. But then again, as what he said, it depends on our means. Situation. Pero if wala tayong government that will put a limit to that particular instinct, then of course, that will create chaos. Like, of course, let's relate that to our situation right now. Like, we are aware of the fact that now nagbaliktad ECQ and very strict ECQ, the strict one, no matter how you call it, in Cebu City, sa matter of fact, na natay bago ng mga quarantine pass, you-revoke na itong quarantine passes before, na QR code, very strict. And human as we are, mga Cebuano, we have our instinct of self-preservation. And we're just basically talking about two things. We are preserving ourselves for the virus. And of course, at the same time, we have this instinct of self-preservation in terms of our livelihood. Ato pag inabuhi part at the same time, and how we have access to our daily mga essentials na to, ato mga basic needs like food. So that's why it created certain issues right now, because again, human as we are, we basically act, as far as Rousseau is concerned, based on our instincts of self-preservation and our impulse. And that's precisely the reason why we have a government. Basically, supposedly, the reason there is to put limit to these instincts and precisely to put a regulation so that our natural rights, ingon si Jean-Jacques Rousseau, will be replaced by civil rights.
Okay.
Our natural freedom will be replaced by civil freedom. We are free, but we are free while following the law. Mula siya pasabot ni Jean-Jacques Rousseau.
Na yung mga limitations.
Katong free, murag kabayo, lakaw-lakaw, nga walay nagkupot na to. We call that natural freedom sa state of nature. Because we create a social contract. Sa abot tabi, buhat na gobyerno. Our natural rights will be replaced by civil rights and civil freedom. We might be free, but freedom within the boundaries and limits of the law. Na natay balaod na gifalo. Muna nga karon, butanda lang, we have the freedom of movement. We have the freedom to travel. But right now, restricted with siya tungod sa pangitabo na to ron, per sure. Diba? Makaingon ta nga, naman atong right to travel. Man by nature is a social animal. We tend to socialize. We tend to move. But right now, it is restricted to the ECQ. And it finds relevance to our discussion today because when you speak of Rousseau, man is by nature governed by instincts. But then again, we need to have a government so that these rights will be limited and it will be replaced by civil freedom. Right now, if we follow the laws of the state, saling tas gobyerno, because this is the civil government that we are fighting right now, no matter unsa man gani di taganahan sa ilang pamalakad, because we are entitled to our opinion, I understand that there are people who are against the move of our government. There are people who are against our city government right now. There are people who are also amenable. Demokrasya maguda. Naitaong ganahan ay dili. But the point of the matter is that civil government maganato ni siya. We are living in a civil government, and if we follow the social contract theory of Rousseau, even though our natural freedoms and liberties are restricted, our freedom to travel, our freedom to move, based on our instincts, if we stay at our houses, just follow the rules of the state, because later on, mahuman lagi ni atong epidemya, kaning pandemic na to, we'll go back to our new normal. Then that's what we call as the civil liberty and freedom. That is the result of the social contract that we entered. Muna sa technically speaking, parcho kang Jean-Jacques Rousseau. And as a matter of fact, among the three social philosophers, kani si Jean-Jacques Rousseau ang pinakaduol sa concept of democracy, parcho. Siya pinakaduol. Kay nakalami ni Jean-Jacques Rousseau, nag-introduce ni siya parcho sa principle or some sort of like a concept which is very relevant in terms of people who are believers of democracy. Kapamilya ka ng term na general will, Parcho. General will.
Kadungog ko na pero
General will.
sa may pasabot gid na lodi.
Before ko mustorya na, tagay gamay.
Iyay, tagay gamay.
Feeling man natin.
Patriling gamay.
Because this is a civil government. Wako yung ayos ko, Parcho. Muna ako arang di
Ako sa gani. Uy, ayos ni. Pait kayo. Di.
Tunga na ni Parcho. Inihara ko ni sundan. Ako ni Hotdon ni Parcho. Muna siya. Mahuman to discussion. Dapat umano ni.
Ako urot na.
Let's go back to general will, Parcho.
Sige, general will.
Think
Lahi
about
ni sa,
this.
kung ano, lodi, lahi ni sa free will. General will.
Muna siya. No, I mean, it's different. Ang general will, Parcho, we call that, kung atong paminawon si JEAN Jacques Rousseau, we call that like a collective will of the people. So, when you enter the social contract of JEAN Jacques Rousseau, Parcho, you will be governed under the general will.
Okay.
Diba, katukang tama subs, Parcho, kung ma-enter ka sa social contract, you don't have any choice but to follow the sovereign leader.
Correct.
Diba? Katong authoritarian. No?
Okay, yung mga
Katong
ihatag
diktador.
na nimong katungod, imong rights.
Yun ang ihatag na. Huwag mabilin person, isundan na person. No?
Pero kasuway na ka na lino. Inom ka na. Itong last ng discussion.
Pero hindi. Kada adlaw hatag na kanan.
Kana.
Hatag na kanan.
Narabas
Bahala mo
kini.
yung mabilin. Hala na rin.
Okay, pa din.
So, ang John Parcho, lahi sa diya. When you enter the social contract, you will be governed by a government that will preserve your life, liberty, and your property. Bahala pag imong rights diha, masurrender nimo, but you will be governed by the government that will ensure the preservation of your life, liberty, and property. Mo siya kan John Locke. Now let's go to JEAN Jacques Rousseau. When you enter a social contract, for what exchange? Ang atong leader ani Parcho will be the general will, as what I said, the collective will of the people. And it's very familiar because our democratic principle is based on that particular perspective. We call that, exactly, sakto ka, we call that the common good. General will is the common good. Sige, balik-balik atong leaders ani, if they make certain decisions, even though it will be met by many dissent and opposition, as long as it's for the common good. Kana yung, sabi saya pa, kaayuhan sa tanan. We call that general will. Asa man nagikan? It came from our very own JEAN Jacques
Rousseau.
JEAN Jacques Rousseau. Familiar po dyan, no? Kato kang utilitarianism ni, of course, kang John Stuart Mill. Pero kang John Stuart Mill, it's based on happiness. Greatest good, greatest number. Pero lahi ni siya, kang JEAN Jacques Rousseau, Parcho.
Specific nga kalahian, di kay muram sa kanang
exactly, Parcho.
for the general, kanang kaayuhan sa kadaghanan, di ba? Okay, unsay kalahian.
Exactly. General will versus particular will. I'd like to introduce to you two concepts.
Sige.
General will and particular will. Now, general will, Parcho, it is the common good. It's the collective will of the people in a certain society to the extent that it could never go wrong.
Sura.
It could never go wrong, which means that something which every one of us, number one, it comes from all, and number two, it applies to all. Both pasabot, Parcho, it's a will of the collective majority in our society in which it could never be wrong because it came from all and it applies to all. Gikan na sa tanang tao, and it applies to everyone without any exception.
100%.
That's the general will. Exactly, general will. Versus the particular will. Particular will, it's the sum of the individual wills in a society. Let me give an example of general will and particular will. Like right now, Parcho, what is the general will of all the people right now in Cebu in terms of the pandemic? The general will is what? Of course, to survive. Am I correct, Parcho?
Sakto, tinood. To survive.
Every one of us would agree that to survive in this pandemic, it complies the two requisites of the general will. Did it came from all?
Yes.
Even though I don't ask everyone's at Cebuano, but I believe that everyone will say that. Will you believe that we want to end this pandemic? Of course, number one, they will say yes.
Tinood.
And number two, does it really apply to all? The answer is yes. In other words, as far as general will is concerned, here in Cebu City, sa atong nitaborod sa atong COVID-19 pandemic, and even the Philippines and the rest of the world, the general will is to end this pandemic, to survive this pandemic as a matter of fact. Mas ka na lang duha, to survive and to end this particular pandemic. That's an example of general will. Parcho, it could never go wrong. Am I correct? Came from all, applies to all. I don't think nanitaw mo, hindi sa'yo po, ganahan ko mamatay, ganahan ko padayon ng pandemic, inindot may trabaho, chill, may eskwela. That's something different already. I think you're not acting normally. Diba? To be very honest. Diba? But the point is, that's the example of general will. Now, Parcho, let's proceed now to the particular will that I mentioned a while ago.
Sige, gani.
Particular will is the sum of the individual wills. In the example that I have given, basically another question that will apply to particular will is how we will address survival and at the same time on to end this pandemic. Can you give me sa imong nabasahan sa newspaper, sa atong media right now, the more popular ones, some people are advocating for tuob.
Kana.
Am I correct? Di ba?
Tuob.
So,
Tanggan pong kuha na. Basig na i-comment si Doc Alvin na. No?
Yeah, kada. Di yan makita ka tagya. Number two, some people perhaps are advocating for, of course, ato government right now, social distancing and, washing,
washing hands.
Di ba? Mask. Buta ka lang, kanang duha lang. Duha lang at siguro ato i-focus. Kaning issue on tuob, is this the general will, Parcho?
Particular will, lalo di.
Particular will na doon because dili tanan.
Di man tanan.
Mo believe na angay ni siya. As a matter of fact, na ay doctors that make their statements against it.
Correct.
And of course, their statements also as being aired live. There are certain doctors who are also recommending this. So, I personally believe, as far as Rousseau is concerned, that it's not a general will. Okay, tuob, as one of the means to protect ourselves from COVID-19. That's an example, not of general will, that's an example of particular will. Because it differs. It does not, wala siya mo satisfy sa two requisites of general will, Parcho. It did not came from all, that does not apply to all. Kilalain mga tao na to in terms of our opinion on that tuob. So, then we know for a fact that perhaps the government is imposing the social distancing, the wearing of the mask, but I don't think all people are following it. Mubito ng hitaboron nga medyo nag-lockdown gid Cebu City, no matter how you call it, na full force atong police and military because not all people are following it. Makaingon ta dili siya general will. Otherwise, ang tanang tao mo follow ta ani. Di ba? Particular na po siya, Parcho. So, let's go back to Jean Jacques Rousseau. Ang atong i-follow gid as far as Jean Jacques Rousseau is concerned, not a particular will, but the general will. Tungod kay general will, good Parcho, it came from all and it applies to all, which means it could never go wrong. Diba? Pero kung saan makita na mong critique ang Jacques Rousseau, like imo nang i-apply ang general will sa Philippine setting, maski Cebu lang ang setting, Parcho, very, very difficult.
This should general day.
How can we address a solution to the pandemic and how to survive in this pandemic by getting the general will? Na it came from all and it applies to all. Lisod.
Lisod guys tanan gid. Lisod kayo.
Isa na sa limitation ni Jean Jacques Rousseau because right now mga Parcho, we are a state, we are a country nga daghan kita, millions ta. And as a matter of fact, our country right now is adopting what's called as a republican state. Familiar ka ni Parcho? Republic of the Philippines.
Correct.
Kanang word nga republic, Parcho, when you speak of the word republic, it means representation. Although demokrasya ta, Parcho, meaning we are powerful as Filipinos, but since daghan kita tanan, we elect people to run our affairs.
To be our representative.
Yes. Muna nga, nagi-gobyerno, Parcho, nga ang mga tao nag-elect of people to represent them, we call that a republic. Muna, Republic of the Philippines, Republic of and so and so. We are a democratic country, at the same time a republican one, because we might be a democracy that the government's power resides in the people. Yet, ang mga tao magid ang batakang masa man ta ang powerful. But then again, sa kadaghan na to partsyo, di madag tanang tao mo decide, we elect people to represent us. Muna nga Republican ta. Muna nga lisod kay tanan ang general will sa atong set up karon partsyo Muna makaingon ka ba ngano man sa nis Rousseau ngano man sa ning general will man sa iyang posible kay makakuha man kastanang problema sa katilingbal og general will. It comes from all and it applies from all. Namo gid particular will. Iba mo ganahan man gud ni JEAN JACQUES ROSSEAU kay usa ka society lang nagamay. Ang government ngayon ganahan partsyo kay dili republican. We call that direct democracy.
Yeah, naay ni buhatan na ludi.
Di siya viable at present. Although sa iyang panahon, sa panahon niya sa Geneva, when he was born at that time, direct democracy sila, city-states man sila. Kamay ra ba? Imagine murag usa ka syudad nga usa na siya ka state, usa na siya ka country, nga usa na ka syudad. Muna ang ideal government ni JEAN JACQUES ROSSEAU. Muna pwede ang direct democracy ana. Direct democracy partsyo, di nakakinahanglan og tao nga mo representa nimo. Pwede na ikaw mo ditso na. Mura bitaw katong panahon nga natas classroom. Katong bitaw I nominate Brian Brusas to be the sergeant at arms. Wala na bitaw who are in favor of who are voting for Brian. Ihap. Muna example
kanang gamay ra kay ang population.
Muna gitawag gamay ra kayo, no? Muna gitawag direct democracy, meaning the people directly participate in the decision making. Wala pwede in general will. Imagine butan tala usa ka gatos sa takabok, magsabot ta diri. Unsa man atong ganahan to survive in this pandemic? Ganahan ba tagtuog? An-awas mga tao, debate diha mo ni muna. Hantod makuha na tong general will that it came from all and it applies to all. Guwapo ta kay concept ni JEAN JACQUES ROSSEAU partsyo, yet very difficult to achieve given the situation. Pero again, nais na po ni si JEAN JACQUES ROSSEAU because he's being said to be one of the people who influenced democracy. Katubitang French Revolution who calls for human equality. Malay mo pangutana diya sa mga listeners if na.
Pangutana si Doc Alvin. Mutsa niya pangutana siya. DDDI ba yun? Sino DD? Direct democracy di ba?
Yeah, muna siya. Actually, muna siya DD, direct democracy nga dimension ni Doc Alvin. Direct democracy, meaning directly participate ng mga tao sa pag-run sa government affairs. Kanino turo, ibinana, wala na yung mga bashers sa itong government, anak. Hindi mo ba sa itong mga health representative, medical representatives natin that's the case. It's a very ideal situation, part show ba, makain ko, how I wish that would have happened, but given the situation na to right now, all you have to do is trust our government because Republican magunta. Ato man putaran. If you're not amenable with their principles, with how this being run, just wait for the next election. But all you have to do right now is give the support and give the trust that we gave them, or if not, the majority has given them, sa elections. Because basically that's how katong gitawag na ni JEAN JACQUES ROSSEAU civil freedom works. We might be free. We are exercising our civil rights, civil freedom under the limits that the law has gave us. Because that's the price of entering a social contract.
Mo dito yung pasabot nga man is by nature free, but everywhere he is changed.
Katuto siyang mga tao partsyo nga nata sa state of nature. We might be free. Wow, free kita. We can roam around without any restraint of physical behavior. But in reality, naatay restraint, naatay limit. Atong limit is our fellow individuals who can put a limit to whatever freedom that we have.
Correct.
Because, it might create a conflict. Na yung mga boundary nga nagko. So, wag gid siya real freedom sa state of nature. Muna mga tao, social contract because, because of the social contract, our natural rights and liberties will be replaced by what we call as civil freedom, civil rights. We might be free, we have the rights, but it is in accordance with the laws of the state. Muna siya nakakuha for sure. Kalamay mo ni JEAN JACQUES ROSSEAU, advocate siya ba quality, freedom, rights, and then naging niya ang under the rule of law. Laod yun. Kaya na may gobyerno, di ba?
Tagay gamay.
Tagay gamay nga. Butangan to gamay tubig, ha?
Walang ko'y tubig Why naman ko okay na.
So, pangitabo or part ba makahinuktog gid ni mga pangitabo ron, and then sometimes we find some sort of explanation from our mga political philosophers that existing like centuries before we were born. And that's what I actually said kanina si JEAN JACQUES Rousseau has a very profound effect sa atong democracy. Era of Enlightenment, era of French Revolution. He's one of those individuals who's being said to be the major influencer ngano natin demokrasya right now. I can, dako tagpasalamat aning tawhana because isa siya naghatag aning insight right now. Imagine, because of the concept of general will, collective will of the people, naagud taan karon sa atong constitution. The government authority resides in the people and the authority emanates from them. Meaning, sa atong situation right now, in our government right now, ang gamhanan, ang tao, yun, ang katawhan. Malagikan. Gikan na siyang JEAN JACQUES Rousseau. The collective will of the people. And the general will, the collective will is always for the common good. Pero mo lagi, kang JEAN JACQUES Rousseau, direct democracy, katong gingon ni Doc Arcaya, DD, direct democracy, but when we apply that to Philippine setting, Republican, because we need some representation, kay tungod kay dako kay tag-population.
So mas ma-apply itong kang kuhan rin kang kinsa to katong kang tamasabs ba to?
Katamasabs na katong mga mo advocate og katong mga authoritarian governments to certain extent, to some states, hindi nila gamiton si tamasabs. That is how the people will adjust to that situation. May ihatag tanan. You give all of your rights to the sovereign, and the sovereign,
Makaingon ba kaludi nga naay gamay nga naay bali naay murag masking ba nga gitawag ang uban nga government nga they are trying to do something else, pero ang nature sa government, for example, democratic ang nature, but pwede ra siya nga naay mga pamaagi nga kanang maka-apply siya og gamay nga authoritative type.
Depends on the execution siguro, Parcho. Muna isa sa mga problem na to sa Pilipinas right now because we have lots of laws na tagbalaod, natay constitution, and then people will actually say that the constitution is the highest law of the land, we have to respect our laws. But there might be a problem in terms of the implementation, the execution aspect. Muna balaod pilahi ang pamaagi sa pag-implementar.
Okay.
So we don't have any problem in terms of our laws, but the problem is the implementation. I think last time natin yung comment ato na the problem is not with the government, but the people who are running the government. It finds relevance to the laws of the state. Wala problema ito balaod, but the problem is the people who are probably running the government. So it depends. And of course, we can also find relevance to the people who are being governed. Kaya ayo itong mga liderato, itong mga tao po mismo, they don't consider the government to be legitimate. They don't follow the rules of the state. They don't follow the leaders. It's a two-way process para nako, Parcho. As a student of political science and sociology professor before, in any given state, the success in any other political entity basically depends upon two things. Alas sa tulian, magulang nga concept, Parcho, that man by nature is a political animal. It's either you rule or you will be governed. It's either you're born to be a ruler, ikaw ang nagbagdumala, o ikaw ang mo-follow. It's a two-way process. We are by nature political animal. So, the success of any political entity or organization for that matter is basically a blend or cooperation of two entities, the leader and the follower. Or again, magunsa ng may liderato, mga tao kay gulo, magunsa pa po na ang mga tao nga responsable kung ang liderato kurakot.
Sa imong opinion, Ludi, gahig o ang mga Cebuano?
I am not really in the position to say that because limited man ang ato abitang perception on things. Matakita gid. We don't have very personal knowledge ba.
Mandawi no. Nasa Kusliloan, agad takita nga to Cebu City.
Kasi siguro taga Cebu City ko, but because we're experiencing we are following the rules of quarantine. So we are not in a position to really say mga tao nga nag-violate sa quarantine procedures. So So we don't have any personal knowledge. But right now, what we can do is really call for cooperation.
Kana yun. Instead of complaining, may pagmutuman na ta.
Instead of, right now, Magod, the best thing that we can do is to trust our leaders that are running the government right now. We might not be amenable 100%. They are not perfect. They have their pitfalls. There are issues. I understand that. May problema na. But the thing is, they have also been doing their part. Pinalalim ilang trabaho, Parcho.
Nakita ang sata.
Let's exchange their position. Ikaw kuno dito magman sa checkpoints. Ikaw kuno dito magproblema sa mga hospitals nato. Ikaw kuno dito kuno mag-check ilan na ka positive ng mga COVID-19 mga patients now. It's not an easy task compared to just sitting in your homes, just using our laptop, cell phone, and basically make those complaints to whatever the government is doing. You don't really know when you are there. So what we can do right now, at least, is to basically cooperate.
Do our part.
Yeah, because we can be a solution to the problem. All of us, not as a government, is part of the solution of the problem. Kita tanan solution sa problema. We cannot say nga nagproblema po lang nag-rising sa incidents of COVID-19 makaingon tatungod dis gobyerno. We are part of the solution. In other words, we can be part of the failure also at the same time. It's not just the government, because any political entity, as what I've actually said, it's basically interaction of two entities: the government and of course the followers of the citizens for the matter. Okay na siya.
Dapat naagi cooperation. It's a two-way process.
Two-way process kisha Parcho. As been studying po in terms of governments, as a student and at the same time of studying political science and sociology ba. And as a lawyer per se, basically summarizing all of the experience ba. It's a two-way process with Parcho. Not just the leader, but also the followers in any political entity. Maski ikaw, sa panimalay, butang talag, ikaw may leader sa mong panimalay. Isip amahan, di ba, Parcho?
Tinod.
Magunsa man ang maayo nga amahan.
Di mo sunod
ang mga, diba? Everything. So, it's just simple. It's just a microcosm. It's just a simple unit of a human organization. Because according to Aristotle, one of my favorite political thinkers, Parcho, like first unit, family, then we have a community, then we have a state, we have a government. So, naagi diha ang relationship of ruler and follower. Ruler, follower, ruler, follower. And the success of all of those political entities is basically the cooperation of both entities. More ginasya. Alright? So, may lain. Simple na kay JEAN JACQUES Rousseau, the social contract theory, and I think para man siguro na.
Ingon si Doc Alvin, concerted effort by, but then that.
Okay. Mga si Doc Alvin, no? I mean, always place the limelight of the mga doctors. They are our heroes, no?
Exactly. May ubay na po sa ilahat tao ng napaga na ng pandemic. So,
our heroes, good. In our current pandemic, they are our heroes. So, I salute Doc Alvin, no? With the rest of our mga
frontliners, mga nurses, atong mga police.
Nurses, atong mga police, military, of course, government officials. So, sabtanay lang ta. Let's help each other.
Indot niya itong topic lo dito kay maka-relate sa present and almost all of that topics man ato magid silang i-relate kay mao man atong aim and goal diri sa atong modernong philosophy.
So, I mean we're actually doing a simple mura man na, no? We can something like a small contribution to our society. We're doing this, it's like a free education for everyone. Like trying to make them understand that there are certain decision making of our government that are based on certain political platforms that has been truly tested by time. So in that particular way, hopefully we can urge them to respect and give legitimacy to our government. And will people find our government legitimate, they might be able to find respect and cooperation. When we cooperate, there's a concerted effort, then hopefully we can end all of these struggles that we're experiencing right now.
Hopefully.
Diba?
Gid atong tumong.
Parang gina siya.
Pindot.
Alright. So mura mas na pa siya.
Maura na. Niya, murag atong pasalamatan before ta. Last na ni wa na yung gamay na kayo. Atong pasalamatan ng tanan na to uban na to sa live session today. Katoy mong mga amigo, akong mga amigo, kinsa man diha ang ni uban na to sa live, ug katong mga mutan-aw pod sa atong
si Rhea.
De la Vie.
Yeah. Ako na siyang sisa sa gabay. Hey, Rhea.
Si great diha uban ni mga kwan.
Mga friends there. Oy, ako mamaw ning watch mo di.
Si Flora.
Si Flora.
Watching from Lahog.
Amping mo di ma.
Tapos di nakagawas mga tagalahog.
Labi ng mga senior citizen like akong mama, akong papa. Kahit may mama, si Flora, akong papa, si papa rin ako, si ate na ko diya. Sige.
Si Poy na diya. Na-mention naman siya na
si Mami Esterlitz. Bato maminaw si Mami Esterlitz. Maminaw tapos Mami Esterlitz. Mami Esterlitz. Kuyog to ni Tisoy. Tamong papi.
Daddy Tisoy. Papi Tisoy. Sige, na-mention na ito tanan?
Yeah.
Okay, so unsa may imong final words ani Lodi para manimilit sa atong mga tigpaminaw o itong nananaw?
Watch na ta sunod na episode sa atong Modernong Pilosopo.
Episode number 7.
We will try to break it down, make it very simple atong mga political philosophers, make it as simple as possible and relatable at the same time, very relevant to our daily situation right now. These are topics that we usually sleep in high school in our college classes. These are very, very, very boring subjects. I will have to understand that, but I'm not playing hero here. The point is, we will at least, make this relevant, simple for us to understand. Because what actually said, we'll never do ang atong mga daily decision making sa atong government. And even we ourselves are probably based on certain political theories that are really tested by time. And, kada Sabado, natay gamay tagay, natay gamay inom diha. Wala discuss o mga ginagmay mga pinulusok ng mga topics with our very own Parchungi, atong award-winning director, o yours truly, Attorney Ebseto, atong halangdong abogado na pangmasa. May gabi diha. Sunod Sabado na po mga kaisunan.
Sunod Sabado na po. Dagang salamat. Onya, don't forget to don't forget sa ato ang kuan pod. If they miss this live session, they can always go to our Facebook page, Modernong Pilosopo, or pwede po sila moadto sa atong Spotify. They can listen to sa podcast, atong podcast. So there are a lot of ways on how they can do the recap na. Oops. Napislit akong outro da. Napoy kuan di, napoy YouTube. So daghang salamat sa tanan and next Saturday na pod.
Yes, Parjo.
Kita ta. Takits mga pilosopo. Salamat. Bye.